Future you is not coming to save you. My name is Dr. Scott Scher, and welcome to another episode of my YouTube channel. If you like these episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe below. I'm new at this, and I appreciate your support as I fully understand how best to help all of you optimize your health and optimize your foundational biometrics and biomarkers and everything else in between. And today, I'm going to talk about attachments. And this is an attachment to the future you. And let's talk about this in some detail here, right? You start with your 180-day transformation plan, right? You want your new you, well, soon, but it's going to take 180 days, right? So new workouts, new supplements, new identity, right? You create a vision board of what it's going to look like in 6 months, leaner, calmer, more successful. But you're like 2 weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks in, you're feeling tired, you're irritated, you're behind. And strangely, what? Are you a little ashamed, right? Because this is like your classic New Year's resolution situation, right? Where you're trying to really get on a plan and do it, but it's difficult, right? And so today in this particular episode, we're going to unpack something deeper than motivation. We're going to go into explore why attachment to a future version of yourself can quietly disconnect you from your physiology, identity, and stability you need right now. And why that's so important for your transformation arc to really not collapse along the way. And look, we're human. Like, we don't think that well in the future. And so even if we give ourselves goals of thinking in the future or being in the future, we're actually just really needing to be today oriented to get things done for the future. And what I mean by that is that every moment are the moments that we have, right? And so what often is underneath our challenges of looking in the future is not laziness, okay? It's this attachment to the idea that future me is going to be better than current me, right? Attachment to a cleaner, more optimized identity, attachment to relief that really hasn't arrived yet, okay? And when the present doesn't match this, fantasy of who you want to be, something subtle can happen. You feel behind in a race that only exists in your head. That's emotional friction and often experienced, quite frankly, as shame, because you want to feel better and you're shameful you can't do it, right? And this becomes fuel for what we could call overcorrection, right? So there's this physiologic tension that is kind of implied in all this, right? When your nervous system is oriented towards future as a solution to a present discomfort, it creates instability, okay? You are basically telling yourself that right now is just not enough, right? And so the body doesn't interpret this well. It's like, I will be better later as hope. And that's not really what we're looking for here. And it actually, what that really ends up being is like a lack of a good safety signal that you can actually do something right now to get to that future self that you're really hoping for so much. So this episode isn't about killing your ambition to do these 180-day plans and things like that. It's about mapping sequence, okay? It's built on energy before regulation. I talk about energy all the time. Remember those powerhouses of your cell called your mitochondria? They're kind of a big deal here, right? You need to have optimized mitochondrial function as much as possible to make energy and to meet your energy demands. This is a big deal, okay? If you have a brain that doesn't have enough energy, you can't think in nuance. You can't understand that future self and the present self and how to make them not dysynchronous if you don't have enough energy capacity. Black and white thinking is very easy when you don't have enough energy, because that's what you're going to do. Nuanced thinking and this sort of nuanced idea of a blueprint and roadmap is very, very difficult to do. You also need to build this on safety before optimization. That means that you're physiologically needing to feel safe. If you're in fight or flight, if you're in sympathetic dominance, it's very difficult to get yourself on a roadmap to be here now. And then look at the optimization strategy over the long term too. And then you really need to have a signal that is vastly louder than the noise, okay? And that is by understanding safety, by understanding mitochondrial function, and by understanding sequence here. So if you attach to this structure first, the plan, the identity, the 6-month outcome, then you skip the map. It's one of those things, in Alcoholics Anonymous, for those who know about it, they talk about, every day you go in and say, hi, my name is, Scott, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm not, by the way, right? But the idea is that every day is a new day that you don't have a drink. Every moment is a new moment that you don't have a drink. And this is how we have to think to be able to get ourselves to that future location. But to do those sort of 6-month outcomes before looking at the map itself, built on energy, safety, a good signal, you're not going to get there very likely, okay? So let's zoom out a little bit, looking at some first principles, okay? Your brain runs on prediction models. When you obsess over a future identity, you create a constant error signal. Current self does not equal ideal self. And so this error signal, it's just not very motivational, right? So if you see that you're not meeting that future self goal, it's going to be difficult to motivate sometimes to get there, right? So this chronic mismatch drives elevated sympathetic tone, which I talk about all the time, sympathetic activation, elevated cortisol levels, it's visceral fat deposition over time, elevated norepinephrine, epinephrine, mitochondrial dysfunction. Cortisol variability is a big one here, reduced reward sensitivity, so you just don't have the capacity to actually appreciate when things actually happen. And you have decreased parasympathetic recovery, which means that you don't have the capacity as easily to drop down out of fight or flight. You think you're pursuing growth. Your body thinks that you're under threat because of this mismatch that's happening. So, and this is hard, right? Because right now in culture, we have this, what I would call this wellness culture amplifier, right? Where we have 6-month body recompositions, 90-day resets, dopamine detoxes, AI-generated future avatar selves that you can talk to, longevity scoreboards, these are all things that are trendy, but optimization without regulation becomes attachment. And that's really what I'm talking about here, is that an attachment without grounding becomes dysregulation. So, and that grounding requires day-to-day, moment-to-moment, being here now during that path. Attachment to process builds capacity, okay? Attachment to outcome, that outcome in the future, destabilizes it. So when you anchor to 6 months from you now, you sacrifice microstability for macro fantasy, okay? Microstability, sacrificing to macro fantasy. That's backwards physiology, right? So again, I'm not into fantasy here. Like, my kids like fantasy. We watch fantasy movies. We all love them. But what we really need to do is microstability, micro moments. Most people respond to the mid-arc collapse of their goals of this future self by doubling down on the protocol, by buying new technology, by switching diets, by adding more discipline. They believe that the problem is insufficient intensity, right? But intensity layered on dysregulated systems accelerates what I've really kind of coined at this point, the sympathetic spiral of doom. Stress, effort, fatigue, shame, more effort, more stress, more effort, more fatigue, more shame. And this is the sympathetic spiral on the sympathetic side. And then the whole system, from a mitochondrial perspective, starts breaking down. And then you get into this survival physiology called the cell danger response, and things are not going to go as well as you'd hope. Okay, so we need to first, step one, stabilize energy. This is a big thing I always talk about. Mitochondrial energy is such a key part here. So stabilizing energy is absolutely key. Number two, we have to establish internal safety. We have to downregulate that sympathetic nervous system. We have to downregulate that sympathetic response. Step three is to build identity from repeated present state success. Small wins, everybody. Micro stability, micro wins. Let the future emerge from capacity, not fantasy. So small wins every single day. Not 6 months from now. What did you accomplish just a little bit today? This is a huge difference. When you're downregulating your nervous system, you're throwing in what I call the parasympathetic edge. When you're more calm, when you're more relaxed, when you're more in parasympathetic, you have strategic stabilization. You have sympathetic reserve. You can always pull it up if you need to, but you don't need it all the time. You just need it when you need it, okay? And so in my framework, health optimization, medicine, and practice, what I'd be thinking about here is the system well-resourced? Do you have optimized levels of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors, your gut health, your hormones, neurotransmitters? Are these all happening and happening as you go? Because the path to health optimization, the path to your 90-day or 180-day, 6-month challenge is much better laid when you have an optimized cellular foundation. Is that safety signal there? Is that sympathetic nervous system downregulated? That is important too. Only then do we layer on structure, because the future self becomes a direction, not a requirement. And what I mean by that is that it's not something that has to happen psychologically. It's just something that we're doing directionally and getting there. Okay. So there's lots of tools that I use in this whole process. Sequencing is important, of course, as I've been describing. Wearables can be really helpful to observe recovery trends. Breathwork or HRV practices can restore that autonomic flexibility, your ability to go back and forth between sympathetic and parasympathetic. You can do periodized training instead of daily maximum output therapy as well. You can get a coach. You can even use psychedelic assisted frameworks. There's lots of different things that you can do here. But the tools are only going to work when this system is ready. If the underlying state is still, I'm not enough yet, then no tool is going to fix that. Okay. And that's super important. You can have all the cool tools and tech and technology you want, but it's not going to work if you don't have a very, very strong foundation. So let's revisit this 180-day plan kind of thing. Okay. Instead of I'll be worthy when, the remap becomes what does my physiology need today to build capacity? Instead of tracking how far you are from ideal, track how stable you are compared to last week. Again, micro improvements. Build a 7-day nervous system, not 180 days. Okay. This is so we don't get attached to that long term. We're just getting that incremental feedback that we're making some changes. Ironically, this is what allows sustainable transformation, right? The future self isn't constructed. It emerges from day-to-day optimization, day-to-day strategies that really make the shift happen. So we all have ambition. We all want to get there. And the path to health optimization is a path that all of us should be on, okay? But so it's not the enemy. But attachment to that longer-term outcome, it absolutely can be. When you release the need for these 6 months from now to validate today kinds of ideas, you reduce pressure on the system, you relax it. You get into that parasympathetic mode, and paradoxically, and I've seen this in clinical practice all the time, progress accelerates. So you don't worry about the future, you just be in the now, right? Be in the now. In the now, man. I mean, anybody remember Wayne's World? But this is, making me sound old. But, be here now, in the now, as Garth would say, right? And so next time, we'll explore how attachment doesn't just show up in identity, but in relationships and technology, and why your nervous system treats both similarly. We'll talk about that, when we talk about attachment next, because I'm going to come back to this. We're attached to a lot of different things in life. But for now, orient to this map in micro stability, day-to-day changes. I'm showing up in this moment, in this day, to stabilize and optimize, and then go from there. Thank you so much for listening to this additional episode on, attaching to that future self of yours, right? And if you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe, share with your friends, family, and colleagues, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.